Our next up, we'll enjoy a fireside chat with the two co-founders behind Wonder Dynamics. They were featured in General Session today, those solutions. This is a company that Autodesk acquired earlier this year. And this team developed a cloud-based 3D animation and visual effects solution that combines AI with established tools. We'll hear from Nikola Todorovic and Tye Sheridan, who joined Autodesk this spring. And moderating this chat is my colleague, Robert Dosch, Product Marketing Manager for Autodesk Media and Entertainment. So please join me in welcoming these gentlemen to the stage.
Excited to be here with you both.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Let's start with, why don't you tell the group a little bit more about yourselves and what inspired you to start Wonder Studio?
We don't want to bore them to death. Yeah, I guess Nikola and I met, 10 years ago? Something like that. We were both working on a film together. I kind of came up in the industry as an actor, and yeah, we met on a film that I was acting in. It was a really small movie, and Nikola came up through visual effects.
I couldn't act, so they put me behind the camera. But yeah, we met and then started writing together, really. And as we were writing, we realized that everything we wrote was either sci-fi or animation that would cost about $100 million to make or more. And both Tye and I kind of always frustrated with this side of the film industry. It's a very hard industry to break into, and it's really hard to get funding on a film and a project you have. So that's really what inspired us to start Wonder Dynamics. We initially started with projects that were more interactive nature. We built this experience where you can kind of have a courtroom drama, that you can have a conversation with the characters in a TV show. And that was a cognitive AI early days, about 2017, 18. And as we were building that, we realized we could use AI to help us create some of these scenes and some of these animations. We called it visual AI at the time. There were no term generative AI. And we really started looking more into robotics and self-driving cars technology, and started, I always say selfishly, we started building these tools because we wanted to make our own films with the idea, like, how do we make films, that's on an indie budget, but that look a little bit bigger like studio films. And then we started, forming the team and building it more, and realized, okay, this is much bigger than us. Then we decided to turn it into a platform.
Awesome. And are you both from Hollywood or from elsewhere?
Born and raised.
No,
No, we both grew up in really small towns, and so the industry always seemed kind of very far from anything that was attainable. You didn't know anyone in the industry, and I think both of us kind of happened to find our own unique path into the industry. I really just kind of fell into. I was not trying to be an actor or anything like that. I just randomly got invited to an audition once, and my parents said, well, why don't you go? You can always tell people you got to audition for a film one time. And so I went, and then I'm glad I did, because I ended up finding one of my deepest passions and loves, which is storytelling. And that's really, I think, what Nikola and I bonded over when we first met. We wanted to make our movies and tell our own stories. And so, yeah, that's really where we started leaning into technology to help us try to achieve those goals. But yeah, and then I guess, to tell everyone a bit about Wonder Studio. Wonder Studio is essentially speeds up the character animation process. So if you've seen those behind-the-scenes videos on whether it's Planet of the Apes or Avatar, you've got the actors wearing those funny-looking onesies. So it's a markerless motion capture. Basically, you can take any video and then retarget the actor's performance to a CG character, and then it gives you a bunch of data where you can take that into tools that you're already using in your process and continue working, so you're not really disrupting the artist process.
Yeah, how really this started is Tye was doing motion capture for one of his films, and he hated the pajama suits, so he called
sweating
me,
so much.
Like, you got to figure this out. I never want to wear this again, and that's.
Everyone was complaining on set about how much I stink. I said, we've got to figure something out. This is not working. Yeah, but I worked on a film. I spent, 8 weeks in a motion capture volume for a movie called Ready Player One that Steven Spielberg directed, and that was 2016 when we made that film. So I got really familiar with kind of the cumbersome nature of, performance capture systems, and also they're quite expensive, right? So yeah, it was interesting. We had kind of the experience both from post-production and production, and my experience being on these sets. And really, we just kind of took that and shepherded all the knowledge and frustrations that we had into what is now Wonder Studio.
Yeah. Speaking of challenges like motion capture suits, what are some technical challenges that come with introducing or building an AI tool?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us, when we started, we were looking, how do we get talent that understands computer graphics and that understand machine learning enough? And then obviously you got to put it, as a software. So you have your traditional soft dev and DevOps if you want to build it as a web browser solution like we did. Alexander, who is here in the audience, our former CTO, was one of those rare people that understood enough machine learning with enough computer graphics. One of the biggest challenges that we faced was silos, right? You can get really good researchers that don't understand product, or you can get really good product people that don't understand computer graphics or the film space, because essentially you're building tools for artists. So you have to build something that, from a point of view that artists would like and understand the UX of there. So I think most of the time you're always fighting silos inside of the company. But I would say, as you're building tools, sometimes, your machine learning problem can be almost impossible to solve. And then you can get kind of stuck in solving smaller and smaller and smaller micro problems. And, having these different departments, we really have different departments that work together. So sometimes we'll get an ML problem and be like, okay, let's solve it halfway there, because otherwise it's going to take us 10 years. And then we'll use kind of traditional CG approaches for the rest until the technology catches up, or the other way with visual effects. So I think that was one of the biggest things we learned in the process is make sure that your teams are really communicating and understanding the problem from their industries.
And once the tool is built, then the challenge is it has to be introduced. So what are some challenges with introducing an AI tool to the film industry?
Well, we were, back in 2018, 2019, when we were first getting into AI, we were so excited about it because I think we knew it was the future of filmmaking, at least as it pertains to visual effects. We were looking at all these image perception models, and we kept telling everybody in the industry that we knew, we're like, hey, this is going to change the industry, and you got to do all this research and educate yourselves and educate your companies, and we were telling the agencies and this and that. And it was almost like, laughable. Like, people thought, there's no way, that's totally science fiction. Mm-hmm. And 3 or 4 years later, the explosion of AI in the world happens, and suddenly people can, AI is tangible for people. And, obviously our industry, the entertainment industry, has had, AI has been very front and center kind of topic. And so, yeah, for us, it was all about, as we were riding that wave, as we said, we built this, we're really artists ourselves. We built tools for artists. These tools are to create opportunities. And so for us, it's really important to, make sure that people understood that about Wonder Studio. And it was also, a unique time to introduce an AI platform to the industry. I think the industry is, notoriously kind of, they're story people, right? But we've been using technology in the industry since the advent of a camera to allow us to do bigger and better things. So I think it was allowing people to understand that AI is just another, technology, another milestone along that path.
It was hard at the beginning to explain some of the nuances of it, right? Obviously you have, because we were building for almost 4 years in stealth mode, so we were not really going around showing it to everybody, but people we trusted. And sometimes people focus too much on like a video that gets out of it, so they think it's a one-click solution, versus we were really big on understanding that, visual effects is extremely complex, and there's millions of ways to shoot a shot. There's millions of decisions you can make in each shot. So for us, it was really important to focus on that data you get out in 3D space out of it. So that was something at the beginning that was very important, because the flashy result you get out is something people get out. So they think like, oh, nice, drag and drop, I'm going to get my final shot. But that's really not the case. It was more of like, how do I get enough data so I can get to my final shot, right? Because I don't think it's in our interest to build tools that can let you, have your final results in without any creative input or creative control. So that was one of the things at the beginning that we had to kind of be very clear about with people.
Yeah, I'd like to speak a bit more about the state of the industry that you mentioned. Why AI now?
Yeah, I mean, the industry is in a really precarious place. We've had our distribution models have shifted so much in the past 5 years. Theatrical distribution is not what it was 10 years ago. And I think COVID really kind of sped that, accelerated that. And I think people now adopted viewing habits that are, you're sitting at home, everyone has streaming devices, and you're watching on these streaming platforms, and so the audience viewer habits have changed so much, and I think the industry is still kind of reeling from, in the wake of that, and but the economics of the industry, in terms of production, really haven't changed all that much. It's still it's still very costly to make these kind of films, and audiences still want to see these big movies, right? Like if they're going to go out to the theater, they want to have a big, kind of experience. And so there's still a demand there. But the economics have changed, and I think it's really, the opportunity that AI presents is to help make these films and satisfy the audience, but make them more efficiently and from a cost perspective. And so that's for us. I mean, that was always the big, exciting opportunity with AI and presenting that to the industry. It's also helping create opportunities for people outside of the industry, because like we said, as we found our way to the industry, but it's typically a hard industry to break into if you don't know anyone. And so for people growing up on the other side of the world, far away from Hollywood, sometimes they don't really have a lot of opportunities to go and make these kinds of films. And I think that's what excites us, is the idea that the next James Cameron or Steven Spielberg could be in some small town in Cambodia, but because he has an internet connection and an iPhone, they can go out and make their own sci-fi short film that could potentially get recognized and tell those stories and have those voices heard. So I think there's, a lot of benefits, but in terms of state of the industry, I think it's needed. We just simply have to figure out how to reduce the cost of production without encroaching on the artist's integrity and the integrity of the filmmaking process.
Yeah. We're consuming content much quicker than we used to, right? With the streaming platforms, used to have 4 or 5 films that come out on the weekend. Right now, with the streaming platforms, if you have 5, 6 different streaming platforms, we consume shows, much quicker as well. And I think it's changed. It used to be indie films stay away from visual effects because of the cost of it, right? Then you had big studio films. Now you have a lot of shows that are trying to be Game of Thrones, which comes with a lot of VFX, a lot of CG, right? And the turnaround time is much, much quicker. And it's getting way more expensive. And then the demand of how quickly we go through new shows. I mean, yourself, like you go through something at Netflix, or you're like always expecting new things that you want. So the demand is definitely there. It's just that the economics of it haven't changed much, so it doesn't scale. That box office model does not scale on the streaming platform model, so I think that's why it's important to bring those prices down.
Who are you seeing use Wonder Studio today? Is it those large studios, or is it the aspiring storytellers who didn't previously have access to visual effects of this scale?
We see it both. Most of the kind of, I'd say we have 3 verticals that we see. We see on film, TV, obviously, that's the biggest one. Gaming, because we have that markless motion capture, so a lot of gaming studios on that side. And then I would say advertising is one of them. As far as the scale, we see everything. Obviously, we did this movie with the Russo brothers last year, the big studio film that's about to come out. And then we have customers from small studios of 3 to 5, or individual content creators that are just doing it kind of for fun or professional to put it on YouTube, etc. So we're really seeing a range of that, which is exciting. I think one of the first customers we had was, Studio of 5 in Japan that wrote to us right away, said we had these projects that we could never afford to do, and now we can do it. So, we're still early. There's a lot more building to be done, but I think people are very excited about the promise of, because I think the problem we have in industry is our imagination is much easier than when you want to create something from the paper to put it actually on the screen. It's very hard. There's so many compromises you do. There's so many things you imagine, and then you start breaking down the budget and you realize, I can do half of this, right? And then you kind of sacrifice your story for these things. So that's where I'm very excited about AI. Is going to really streamline that process, between the two.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting that storytelling is now more accessible thanks to tools like Wonder Studio. I'm curious, what were some alternative names to Wonder Dynamics, Wonder Studio, or how did you land on that name?
We actually originally were called Ether, spelled A-T-H-E-R. Nobody could spell it. So
Or say it.
Or say it. And then we ended up changing it. I think it was about 2018, 2019. We were in stealth mode, so it wasn't that big of a thing. But we were saying earlier, when you have a co-founder, you end up being like a married couple. You spend so much time together that you end up fighting over things that don't matter. So the name, we didn't want to leave it up to that. So we ended up kind of putting together a list.
It was a long process. We spent like 9 months trying to come up with a new name for the company.
It really ended up because we wanted to combine, kind of sense of wonder in storytelling. There's a lot of that, and then obviously dynamics has to do with movement. It has to do with technology. So that name felt very, very comfortable in a sense too.
Very cool. What excites you the most about AI right now?
Yeah, I think what Tye was saying. I just like Tye, I come from a really small town. I was born in Bosnia, and to me, my uncle had a small VHS store. If you remember those VHS tapes, right, that you can rent. And I don't know, you always dream as a kid like I want to work in storytelling. I want to work in the film industry, and that just seems so unrealistic when you're in a half a globe away, right? Same with Tye probably. You couldn't even explain to people that there's an option of working in this industry for a living, right? It's very hard, especially in countries where economically you're kind of struggling, and then you're dreaming to go to Hollywood and make films. So I think that's really what's exciting is we do have to expand the market. I do think a lot of filmmakers don't get the luck that I have, to end up, because right now you do have to end up in LA and find someone like a producer or someone, right, to help you make your film. So that's why I think with AI it's going to be very exciting to give these opportunities, to hear these voices, right, and to expand where these films are coming. And then on the flip side of that, we got to lower the risk. I think a lot of studios, they know how to make really good films and big films, but sometimes making art films is a really big financial risk. I always say if you make something for 200 million, you need 600 million to break even. So you have to make something that an 8-year-old and a 60-year-old would want to see, right? You can't go and make a risky art film set in space, which is, a lot of films, at least for me, are the films that are grounded in story and grounded with characters. Those are interesting. So I think if we, instead of making one $100 million movie, maybe we can make 10 $10 million movies that then you can really, make it visually big. Because the younger audience, they love visually big films, right? But unfortunately, a lot of visually big films just don't have that much depth in the story and the messaging, because you don't want to risk losing all this money. So I think that's, if we cut the cost down, we can take bigger risks with the stories.
It's also, the opportunities it creates in terms of to do something new. Like who's going to establish the new medium, who's going to set the new bar? Mm-hmm. I think that's really exciting. And yeah, there are all of these benefits of, making production more accessible, making it more cost efficient, but also just allowing all those new voices to be heard, new kinds of stories that feel like, I think it's an industry that kind of prides itself on, shining a light on people or stories, people who are misrepresented. And I think oftentimes we struggle as an industry to truly capture the authenticity of certain stories. And so I think expanding those opportunities and allowing more global voices and have more global input for these stories is incredibly exciting, because I think suddenly the competition becomes much greater, right? And I think that most talented storytellers are going to rise above and set a new bar for the best movies we've ever seen. That's my hope, right? I'm an optimist, mm-hmm. But I'm really hopeful for that future, and that's, I think, what is incredibly exciting for us.
Yeah. What does that workflow look like if someone in the audience was curious and wanted to try Wonder Studio today, what does that look like?
Yeah, so we really focused on getting as much information from camera. So workflow is really you shoot your scene and edit it how you would want it, and then you can upload it in Wonder Studio. And we have a couple of options. The live action tends to drive those CG characters to put them in that live action shot. So you upload your footage, and then you can upload your character that you can build in Maya and then import. Or we have some templates character you can play around with. And then essentially you're going to get a little previs that shows you what that shot, that sequence looks with that CG characters, which is not going to be perfect, but then you're going to download either your Maya scene, Unreal scene, or Blender scene that has your animation data, your camera data, your lighting data, and then you can go in and fix your animation, fix your camera, fix your lighting, and render out the final shot. So that was one thing we saw the importance of working with legacy tools, so you can have that editability, because a lot of generative AI solutions right now are black boxes that produce, generate these pixels that you can't really manipulate to define as detail that you want. So we're big believers in staying in that 3D space for that editability.
Yeah, and if anyone in the audience is interested in getting a closer look at Wonder Studio, it is being demoed in the Expo in the Amity Industry Zone. So I invite you to go check it out today. Tomorrow, you can meet the team. They're there all day. That's all the time we have, so I want to thank you guys for the conversation. I hope it sparked a little bit of interest and inspiration in the audience, and
Awesome.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.